we have a massive number of MSMEs in our country. We're talking of 63.4 million enterprises that exist. So clearly, the push from the government has been to give many stimulants in form of policy reforms, tax benefits, schemes and programs. Atmavishwas se Atmanirbhar. Let me bring in Ms. Alka first into this conversation as she represents the government here and has been working aggressively on a whole schemes to push the MSME sector. First of all, congratulations, ma'am, for what you've done. It's a great step in the right direction. But what has been the response in your mind so far from the MSMEs? And have you seen the impact that it was meant to give or the stimulus it would have meant to give? Has it come about, or there is more that needs to be done, ma'am?
Thank you, Swati, and good afternoon to all for joining this session. What we are trying to do is that, increase the digital literacy day by day for the MSMEs, because the COVID period has, made all of us aware that, as most of us know, that in the government also, though we were trying to, make all our files digitized and, be on the e-office, but now, very proudly, I can say that, during this period, we have now become 100%, on the digital platform. So there are no longer those bulky files which are being carried in the ministries anymore. You don't need to see anybody. You just need to be with your monitor and your laptop or whatever, and you can work in any space. So that is one part, which, So, COVID, as my Minister Gadkari Sahab always has said in his webinars, that, we have to look at the brighter side, what has happened, during this period. One, it has brought digital literacy. It is literally forcing all of us to become digitally literate. And that is what is happening to the MSMEs also. So MSMEs, as Swati, you mentioned that, the government has, doing a special focus and a drive. Yes, we have brought it into focus, but let me also tell you that for the past few years, the ministry has been driving the MSME platform, at every international platform, at any kind of platform. And in the past 2 years, like with CII, we have been doing programs. We have also made a platform where we have been interacting with the international, with different countries, and 2-3 programs which have happened in the ministry. Nearly 40 to 50 countries have participated, and we have practically married our Indian MSMEs to those MSMEs which are keen to work with the Indian MSMEs. So that is one platform which the ministry had been promoting on the international level. And let me tell everybody, and also the countries which are participating and the members from different countries who are there, the MSMEs world across speak the same language. The language, why I say is the same, is because they all work with a limited capital. They all have the same issues, they are, stressed out for funds, then the supply chain, then, how to market their products. So the story remains whether you are talking to an MSME in India, or you're talking to an MSME in Poland, or you can take any African country. So this is what we had realized, and that is how these global platforms we were using, and we were trying to work on them. Coming to the COVID period, yes, it has been a great, big hit to the MSME sector, because this was, as it is, a vulnerable sector. And the government during this period has announced many schemes. Yes, some of them have started showing benefits, but there is a long gestation period also, because as we all know that many of the labor went home. There were a lot of many other issues, how you have to work when you start operating your factory or your small premises. You have to take care of certain, guidelines, etc., etc. And yes, the monetary part also has been a issue. So in the meantime, what the ministry has done, I just wanted to apprise you about that, and the government also at a higher level, at a bigger level. First of all, the long pending definition of the MSMEs has been changed. So that has brought the MSMEs into the main line, like, and now there is no longer any difference between the manufacturing sector and the services sector. So what was realized by the government is that the services sector also plays a very, very important role in this whole chain. And both the sectors have been brought at par with each other. So that has been one big announcement which the government has made. Also, after the definition, the tenders worth up to 200 crores, they will no longer be global tenders. So this gives a lot of opportunity to our small and medium companies, to quote, for the government tenders. And this is being really looked forward into many spaces. And the CPSCs also have been being sensitive to the needs, and we already have a public procurement policy in place where the 25% is to be picked up from the MSMEs, and the ministry had launched 2 years earlier two portals which the Honorable PM has also spoken about at various forums. Coming to the COVID period, yes, it has been a great, big hit to the MSME sector, because this was, as it is, a vulnerable sector. And the government during this period has announced many schemes. Yes, some of them have started showing benefits, but there is a long gestation period also, because as we all know that many of the labor went home. There were a lot of many other issues, how you have to work when you start operating your factory or your small premises. You have to take care of certain, guidelines, etc., etc. And yes, the monetary part also has been a issue. So in the meantime, what the ministry has done, I just wanted to apprise you about that, and the government also at a higher level, at a bigger level. First of all, the long pending definition of the MSMEs has been changed. So that has brought the MSMEs into the main line, like, and now there is no longer any difference between the manufacturing sector and the services sector. So what was realized by the government is that the services sector also plays a very important role in this whole chain. And both the sectors have been brought at par with each other. So that has been one big announcement which the government has made. Also, after the definition, the tenders worth up to 200 crores, they will no longer be global tenders. So this gives a lot of opportunity to our small and medium companies, to quote, for the government tenders. And this is being really looked forward into many spaces. And the CPSCs also have been being sensitive to the needs, and we already have a public procurement policy in place where the 25% is to be picked up from the MSMEs. And the ministry had launched 2 years earlier two portals which the Honorable PM has also spoken about at various forums, the two portals which are doing very well, where we are monitoring how much is being procured from the MSMEs. So that part is also taken care of, and the global tender. And we have other schemes like our cluster scheme, where we are working very vigorously on, creating small and big clusters. And also a portal has been launched by the ministry in the month of April by the name of Champions Portal. Here what we are, this is the first AI-enabled grievances portal, which has been linked to all the nationalized banks or the private banks. And the operation room is basically in our headquarters here in the ministry, and we are connected to all our centers across the country. So what we are trying to do is that if any MSME has a grievance, because generally it is related to the finance. Now these grievances are being sent on real-time basis to the banks. And the banks are supposed to reply them in a time frame, because what used to happen is that if the loans are finally given by the banks, it's not the ministry which gives the loans. So to help the MSMEs, and why their project report is not being cleared, or if they need any guidance, so we have got all these banks on board with us, and it's being monitored by a cell that, in real time, we are at least trying to, this is the first step. Of course, we cannot get them the money, because that ultimately depends on the project report. But at least there is somebody who's listening to them. So these are the steps which are being taken. And I think we can go along as you start conversing with the other participants on the forum.
But let me bring in Suhas ji into the conversation. The reforms that are required from compliance and regulatory perspective for MSMEs, Suhas, we need an enabling environment that everyone talks about. But from the regulatory perspective and compliance perspective, how best are we poised right now, and how much more room do we have to grow from here?
Thank you very much, Swati. welcome everybody on this panel, and thanks a lot to all my co-panelists for giving me the opportunity here. Thanks to CII. Very quickly, Swati, you've kind of touched upon a very critical issue today. You see, while I completely agree with all the panelists, I mean, Mr. Goenka, Mr. Somani, absolutely right in terms of where we are in as MSMEs, and we need to be the best in the world for us to compete at the global level. And from that perspective, I think, as Madam Alkaji mentioned, I think there is a lot of initiative that has been taken by the government. But as being MSME with global aspirations, I must say this, that we today are completely bogged down with the VUCA factor. You see the vulnerability, uncertainty, you have complexity and ambiguity of doing business. When we go at the global level, I don't think there is lack of self-confidence. I think there is lack of creating these global competitive capacities. You see, whenever we have looked at the history of various industries, we have realized that India has become world leader in a particular sector by competing at a global level, not merely based on the products, the quality of services, but also, looked at business ethics, looked at corporate governance, looked at compliance at the globally best level. You see, just take textile as a sector today. I mean, the textile compliances are becoming more and more complex. Everybody is talking about circular economy and sustainability. And if we have to do business, if me as MSME has to do a business, I must therefore inculcate this as DNA, the thought process. Therefore, what we really need is moving from best practices. Of course, we need to bring out best practices, but moving from best practices, we need to bring out best leaders. We need to bring out best ideas for us to tackle the VUCA factor today. And I think, in my view and my perception, this is the role of individual MSMEs. Government is doing what it is doing in terms of facilitating this correctly. But if we have to move from local to global, I think that's very essential.
Okay, we have to keep that in mind since you're moving from vocal to local, and that's important. We need to leverage the stuff that's happening around and the facilitation that the government is doing, the OEMs is doing. Mr. Sharma, how's the industry perceiving vocal for local? Is the understanding that products be made more competitive vis-a-vis global brands, or everybody should buy only local products?
I appreciate all of the panelists. They have addressed the issue very correctly. You see, as far as the vocal for local or the Atmanirbhar Bharat, the country has just started pondering upon that this is also an issue. Because up till now, when we go to the market, right from the white goods appliances to the small lights, we have been buying either material from Thailand or from Indonesia or from China or from Taiwan or from Vietnam. So now this slogan given by Honorable Prime Minister has changed the mindset of the people, and we have started looking at it very seriously. But this will take some time. Now coming back on MSMEs, they have a lot many issues. Out of the 60 million plus MSMEs, if you see, then you will find only a few 100,000, less than 500,000 are these true business people, those who are managing differently, and they are the large organizations. Like if there are component suppliers to OEMs, then there are so many tiers: tier 1 vendor, tier 2 vendor, tier 3 vendor. But unfortunately, the agony is that tier 3 is not being graduated to tier 2, and tier 2 is not being graduated to tier 1, and that is a big issue today. Because the tier 1 who is already tier 1, they have tier 2 and tier 3, and they don't allow them to come up in their life. So that is something very serious in this country. The other is, I agree with Somani ji and also with Goenka ji, that the OEM will have to support. For example, working capital. These tier 3 people, they are getting their payments in 90 to 120 days, and sometimes payable when able. So how can they manage their funds? It's very difficult. They're very small people, very tiny people, having turnover of 2 crore, 3 crore, 5 crore, maybe 10 crore maximum. And the tier 1, they get the payment within 30 to 45 days or maybe little early. But the tier 2 will get in 60 days, and then tier 3 will get in 90 days. In a way, the tier 3 will have to support the tier 1 and will also have to support the major OEMs. What I suggest today in this gathering, that the tier 3 should be paid 50% advance by OEMs upfront. And similarly, the Indian banking system should support the tier 3. Unless we graduate from tier 3 to tier 2 and tier 2 to tier 1 and tier 1 to the real players in the international market, we cannot address the issues. If you see the overall situation in the country, it is very precarious. The another point is today when we see the salaries are increasing, thanks to some of the states, they are allowed 12 hours of working, but this has to be because the manpower is not available today because they have migrated to their hometowns and home states and they are unable to move. The another big issue, which is a stumbling block for MSMEs, is the power tariff. If you see the power tariff in Chennai is 14 rupees per unit, in UP it is 10 rupees per unit, in Punjab it is 8 rupees, and in Maharashtra it is 12 rupees per unit. So how a small entrepreneur can set up his industry in these areas which are flourishing as industrial hubs? The problem is that the one Bharat, one electricity tariff, unless we implement in this country, it is very difficult to put up industries everywhere in across India. If you see the 7 sisters and 7 brother states, the 7 sister states are northeastern states. The 7 brother states are Odisha, Jharkhand, Bengal, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, and Madhya Pradesh. So these states are least developed states, least industrialized states. There are no MSMEs working in these states. So all these 14 states of this country, 7 sisters in northeastern states and 7 brothers, we call them, these are not developed as MSMEs. So just 1 or 2 minutes, I'll take more. You see, the government has come with a policy. Yes, they will support the MSMEs. Yeah, that is very good. But you know, today, if we see the MSME person, because I have many MSMEs customers of mine, and they are always starving for cash. And unfortunately, they are charged at a very high rate by banks, 9%, 9.5%, 10%. I mean, a triple rated company charge 6%. And these MSMEs are charged 10%. This is something ridiculous.
Okay, hand holding is required. Well, there are lots that's happening already in terms of helping them out, but I think there is a need for them to now start recognizing that they can make a difference on their own. Surely, Dr. Goenka, I want to come to you to understand from you the German model you spoke about, and everyone's keen to know, you know, when we hear make in Germany, made in Germany, made in the US, you know, it still has that pull to it. When we talk make in India, it's still a work in progress. How can we become and get recognized the way we should? And you know, everyone aspires to talk about it. So what's your thought, and tell us about the German model, sir?
Are you talking in relation to MSCs, SMEs, or generally?
No, MSMEs only.
Okay.
To begin with, sir.
So, I just wanted to put on the table that see, any business to succeed, whether you are a small micro business, medium business, large business, does not matter. You have to have a sound business model. Without sound business model, no matter how much hand-holding anybody does, you cannot succeed. Now, Germany has traditionally been kind of home for very strong, what they call SMEs, small and medium enterprise. They're called Mittelstand. I think many of the people will know about Mittelstands. And they are really the backbone in a true sense of manufacturing in Germany. And you would be surprised to know that more than half the value add in Germany happens through the Mittelstands, and their turnover is more than a third of the manufacturing turnover. Now, if you have to compare what they do, what the Mittelstands are, and how they compare to Indian MSMEs, I think the thing that I have seen from what I've read and from the few that I have talked to, that the most important thing they do is they have a very sound financing model. They work on about 50% of their own money being equity. They work on then bank borrowing and not using other means of funding. And having that strong or sound financing model helps them to invest for the medium term and the long term, and not kind of get sort of become victim of any crisis that might come. But the more important difference than the financing model is the fact that they do a lot of innovation and technology development. So just being a SME, as I was saying earlier, just being a SME does not mean that you have to not have Atmavishwas that I can be the best in the world that I'm doing. And a lot of the innovations in Germany come from these SMEs rather than from large corporations. In fact, the number that I had seen was 25-30% of all innovation in Germany happens through these companies. And the government support is more in terms of investment in R&D, skill shortage, skill development, foreign trade, investment, financing needs, company startups, company handover, stuff like that. So if you were to, maybe Alkaji will have a view on this, you would have studied the Mittelstand model. If you were to see how do we kind of bring that into our MSMEs and make our MSMEs really strong. And I said earlier that it will require the government to work with them, it will require the OEMs to work with them, and it will require themselves to want to help themselves to really become a strong part of a manufacturing value chain, rather than always being in this feeling of MSMEs need help, MSMEs need support. They can become strong on their own.
So a lot of stuff to be taken as models from global world. Mr. Suhasji, I want to come to you. What does it take to go beyond the slogan that we're talking about? And frankly, the steps that you think MSMEs now have to play on, this is the opportunity, this is the time. I think everyone is trying to support the sector. Where and how do you see this propel? And the new guys, the new entrepreneurs who are trying to get into this space, how and what they can leverage on? You think they're sitting on a huge opportunity?
Yes, there is a huge opportunity here, and you touched a very interesting point there, which is what does it take to go beyond the slogans such as vocal for local or from local to global. I think these are not merely slogans, but I think there is a lot of fundamental which has gone into it, and a lot of fundamental that can be addressed. One such issue, which is cost to quality equation, getting it right. And I think every panelist, including Goenka-ji, is absolutely right that there's no compromise to the quality. And when we talk about quality, I think the biggest difficulty that MSMEs are facing is the cost of quality. And I think that cost of quality in Indian context is tremendous. You see, for getting something right which can compete at a global level, the cost of quality is very high in India. You need reputations, you need repairs, you need a lot of re-engineering to be done. More importantly, I think this equation can be correct if we actually look at innovations within MSME in a very correct perspective. See, one of the fundamental issues when you talk about Taiwan or China, I think the IPR regime there, number one, is very strong. Number two, they recognize innovations very early and reward innovations. I think when we talk about startup, we probably got that right in terms of innovation push and IPR consolidation push. But very slowly, I think we've realized that innovations are critical to get this cost quality equation right. And getting that cost quality equation right, what does it take for us? One, to say that fine, there are opportunities that are coming up because of whatever deglobalization, decoupling that has happened. And it's dawned on to most of us that in many sectors, the key starting material itself is not indigenously available. Look at pharmaceuticals and you will realize the key starting material itself is not available. So how do you indigenize that and manufacture in India, which is the local support here? And when you actually go to the global, I think one fundamental issue that remains is that compliance, there is no quality. There is no compromise there. There's no compromise when you talk about business ethics, and there is no compromise when you talk about quality. I think these are three broad parameters where everybody should have a zero tolerance when you're talking of competing at a global level.
Okay. competing at global levels, zero tolerance. And I think that's the approach India needs to take and get on to using this opportunity, this platform that the government is giving. I think this is the time, this is the decade of MSMEs, and they have to take up all that is being rolled out and given. Very well said, sir. Thank you so much, and I really appreciate you all having spent this time and this and bring out some very important elements on this whole MSME program. Ma'am Alka, thank you for telling us what the government has been doing and what more is expected, and the kind of work you've spoken about. I think we've all been enlightened with lots that's coming up from the government's end as well. And industry, of course, I would like to thank participants, Dr. Goenka, Dr. Somani, Dr. Sharma, Mr. Sharma, and Satulja Purkar. Thank you very much, all of you.